Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussions, news, and interviews, presenting The Film Scene with Illeana Douglas. Illeana is an actress, writer, author, and film historian with a need to discuss movies that borders on obsession. You'll learn the history of movies one great story at a time. The Film Scene is the deep cuts of movie podcasts, featuring movies we love by the people who made them. And now, Illeana Douglas.
Why, hello everyone, it's Illeana Douglas. Welcome to The Film Scene. We are live, and we have Moby on the show today. I'm so excited.
I can't believe it. It's such a cool book. I'm such a fan of Moby, both as a musician, but also just like as a kind of culture, part of our modern culture. He's such an interesting artist.
Does it make me cooler that I know Moby?
Illeana, your Rolodex of friends makes you one of the coolest people I know, without a doubt.
6 degrees.
I love it.
Anyway, so I wanted to talk about a couple things. A tough week for me in terms of history. You know, I love film history. I love architecture of California. Unfortunately for all of us, hidden within this Bill 330 and Bill 592, our Governor Gavin Newsom signed these bills, and purportedly to help the homeless situation. But what actually is happening is that these are bills designed so that developers can come in and obliterate what are laws that were on the books, historically protected zones, and they're called HPOZs. I live in one. It's called Spalding Square. There's other beautiful little areas. There's in California, in Los Angeles, there's only 35 HPOZs. That's not a lot. I was actually shocked to find that out. Now, on my street, one of the homes that Lucille Ball lived in, brought her family out. Charlie Chaplin's son lived on the street. All sorts of interesting people, production designers. My 4 streets called Spalding Square were HPOZ protected in the late 70s. Melanie Mayron worked very hard actually to protect these areas. And that's what's so interesting. The reason I moved here is I thought, well, this is done. I'll never have to wake up and be like some of my friends where they're building a McMansion next to you. And, nobody got to vote on this thing. They just snuck it in calling it a housing crisis bill. But it's in there, and people have disputed me about this, but it's true. It's happening. And people should, if they're in an HPOZ, I don't really know what we're going to do, but we have conversations here all the time about what were these people thinking when they destroyed the Garden of Allah, or the Brown Derby, and it's happening right now under our very noses.
Especially LA it's one of those cities that I feel like it doesn't have the same sense of cultural history as other cities, despite trying. It's if you look at New York, there's this devotion to really making sure they're preserving what they need to. But like, we just lost Samuel French, which was right by. Where it's funny, I actually coincidentally live very close to Illeana, and the thing I love about Spalding Square is it's this little corner of LA where you feel like you're escaping the city. There are beautiful trees lining the streets, and even the houses. They all have their own kind of quirky look.
Well, what's interesting about it is that these were orange groves. If you look in some of the early silent movies and some of the comedies, you can see these orange groves that they were shooting in. And these little bungalow houses, which they were plots of land sold by a man named Spalding. That's why it's called Spalding Square. But they were little bungalow houses, and oftentimes they were kit houses. So built from 1911 through 1922, specifically around the burgeoning film industry, specifically Charlie Chaplin's studio, which was on La Brea. On Fountain, there was a streetcar. You could actually hop on the streetcar, go right to work. Wouldn't that have been great to have that? And what's interesting about these streets architecturally is that the 4 streets of completely uniform bungalow houses, kit houses, are something that is, quite beautiful to look at, aside from being, kind of an oasis. And, everybody agrees that there's a homeless, issue, of course, but to destroy only 35.
Right.
I mean, that's not a lot. This isn't, Spalding Square was not, Fairfax, we're surrounded on, by condos on Fairfax now, La Brea. You said where you are, other streets.
Right.
I mean, literally the next street over from Spalding is now all condos.
Yep.
Because they can build it. But it's as if they resented those 4 little beautiful architectural houses that are 100 years old and have and hold the secrets of the history of the Hollywood film business, and it really is a tragedy to me.
I'm even reading like Hancock Park, Windsor Square, like Larchmont, like a lot of these. Again, LA's this sprawling mess of a city. I love it, but urban planning is not like the forte of our city, I would say. Sometimes it kind of feels like someone just vomited on a blueprint, and that was kind of how LA showed up. So these little islands of HPOZ protected houses, especially historic ones, are really important. It's like the last bastion of old Hollywood.
Yeah,
it is. I'm usually not as passionate about this stuff as you are, but maybe because it's close to my neighborhood. But it is really important.
Along those lines, somebody sent me today. Marie Windsor is a B film actress from the 50s, The Narrow Margin, and people always have commented. I met her many years ago. I look quite a bit like her, although when I met her, she didn't. She had no idea why I wanted to meet her, which is funny in itself. But I came across from a fan, which I didn't know. Apparently, she made enamel jewelry and enamel things out of enamel. And somebody sent me something of hers that was being sold on Etsy. And apparently, it's something she made for Lloyd Bridges. Wow. And again, it made me so sad. I sent it to Eddie Muller from TCM. I said, "Look at this. I had no idea." And he said, it was a tragedy when she died. Her family just, sold everything off, and it's all scattered around. And, and so I just, getting back to the HBOZ thing, what's so sad is you think, okay, well, maybe she died in the 90s. We didn't really care so much about preservation. But now we do. I mean, we have to acknowledge these people that, that work for the film industry, and to have people's things scattered all over the place. I want the Academy to take, every actor's contribution, I think, to the film industry is important. I always think of it as something sacred. So it's as if I wish I had all the money in the world. So you could buy everything and give it to the Academy so that people can see it. I don't know if you were able to see a few years ago the Stanley Kubrick exhibit.
We're at the which Academy building?
That was at the L.A. County Museum.
I actually don't know if I saw it.
Oh, it was incredible. All the little artifacts and things like that. It's just incredible. So I love history, and it's just sad. You just, in the old days, at least you had a fighting chance. That's why I'm talking about it now. Nobody got to vote on it. It was just one of those things that's just buried in the bill. Wow. And the developers come out of San Francisco. They're not Los Angeles natives.
Is there anything our listeners can do? Write to Gavin Newsom, I suppose, right?
Yeah, they can look at the bill, and, they can certainly write it. It's a bill now. It's going to happen. Our neighborhood put together a video. We made a video talking about the history of the neighborhood. The only thing I would suggest is the other people that are in the HPOZs, band together, get on boards, and as a neighborhood, maybe try to fight this. The sad thing is you can't move. If you move, that's it. Just don't ever move.
Right.
We're all in our neighborhood now. Just don't leave.
Barricade.
Because if you leave and you sell your house, a developer is going to want to buy it.
Wow.
And put up a condo. And there will no longer be 4 unique blocks of architectural bungalows. It's just a tragedy.
It really is.
Come visit us. Every day, the street. We got to get to Moby. But also the Halloween, on Genesee, we have the house from Halloween. Mm-hmm. And, oh my goodness, every day someone's out there taking a picture.
Sure.
And it's so fun. It's just a great part of being in L.A. All right, well, let's get to Moby, for goodness sakes. He's awesome. Moby is a 6-time Grammy-nominated American musician, a songwriter, a singer, a producer, and, of course, an animal rights activist. He sold over 20 million records worldwide. He's considered to be one of the most important electronic music figures since the early 90s. He's noted for his eclectic discography, which features everything from soaring ambient vocals to intense industrial beats to hip-hop. And he's, of course, a highly committed animal rights activist, one of the most important voices in the vegan movement. Also one of the stars of Pittsburgh. Ladies and gentlemen, Moby. How's it going? Oh, and on the author of your book. Now, this is your second book, Then It Fell Apart.
Second memoir, yeah.
But you wrote, what was the name of your first memoir?
The first one was called Porcelain. And Porcelain sort of took place between 89 and 99. And the second one is Everything Else, Up to Sobriety, which was about 11 years ago.
I love that.
While I was waiting, I was reading your book.
Yes.
And I have a couple of questions. One is Berlin Turnpike. What did there...
Oh, the Berlin Turnpike. That's Connecticut.
That's not the Merritt Parkway?
No,
there's an actual Berlin... Because I grew up in Connecticut, and I don't know that I'm familiar with the Berlin Turnpike, but you were talking about a pimp.
Yes.
And I'm assuming, and I don't want to get in trouble, but the hotel that you're talking about was the Hi-Ho D'Addario. Do you remember that motel? It was off the Merritt Parkway.
Yes.
And growing up, whenever we'd drive by it, my grandfather or my grandmother or my mother or my aunts would be like, they charge by the hour.
Yes.
And everyone just understood, like,
Moby,
it's
where
Connecticut hookers go.
Yes. It's this thing that I had to explain and people would say, "What do you mean they're in?" I said, "Well, because we're in the middle of the woods. We have no streets."
It was the weirdest hotel because, like, you'd be driving down the Merritt Parkway or this fictional Berlin Turnpike that you obviously just invented for your book.
No, it's the Berlin Turnpike.
And in the middle of the woods would be this big, weird hotel, and you're like, "Who in the world stays there?" And it's like, turns out,
by the hour,
a lot of people, but not for very long.
They were called, because the years later I worked for Steve Rubell, and we used to call those short stays.
You worked like Steve Rubell, like Studio 54, like Ian Schrager's partner, Steve Rubell?
Yes, that'll be in my second book.
Wow.
Too. Yeah, that was my first job.
Did you do a lot of cocaine?
No, I didn't. I'm not a drug person at all. But when we would do something that would please him, he would give us, he'd say, "You're such good kids. Here, have fun." And he'd give us like Quaaludes and stuff. So we one night we collected them, and then one night I have a photograph. One night, two of the bellmen and myself, we took Quaaludes and drank and photographed it, and it was a once in a lifetime kind of a thing. But no, I don't know if they all the drugs were for the famous, were the celebrities. The workers didn't really. Okay. We only got,
as far as like interesting New York pedigree goes, like working for the guy who started Studio 54 is pretty solid.
It was incredible. I worked for him when he came out of prison.
Didn't they go? I thought they went to prison a few times. No.
Well, that I don't know about, but this was around 1983, and they started the Palladium, and that's when they came back and they reopened the Palladium. And they went into the hotel business. Mm-hmm. And my understanding is because when they were in prison, that's how they thought of the idea for the hotel business, being in those very small quarters.
Not to get in trouble, but like some of their hotels are a little prison-like. Like it seemed like the ethos was have like a super glamorous lobby with lots of people like drinking and doing drugs and having sex in the bathroom. And then by the time they get to their rooms, they'll be so drunk and high they won't notice that the rooms are tiny, like the Royalton and the Paramount and all these places. Like,
that's the idea.
You got perfectly fine, but like the rooms. I remember the first time I put a friend of mine in one of those hotels, and they were like, "As long as I stay in the lobby, it's fine. If I go to my room, like you can touch the walls if you like spread your arms." And he was not a big person.
Yes, that's exactly what we did. They kind of invented the idea of taking old, what they call SRO hotels.
Single room occupancy. Yeah.
Yes, and turning them, in the first case, which was a hotel called Morgan's, became Morgan's, but it was originally called the Hotel Executive. And
in Koreatown.
No, this was on Madison Avenue. It was actually a place where newsmen would go.
I think now that's Koreatown, though.
It is?
Yeah, Koreatown has spread.
God, I haven't
so, like, the Morgan is actually there, yeah.
Madison in the 20s is...
Right. Well, it's okay. Or Koreatown adjacent.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's... Yeah. So, what do we want to talk about apart from single room occupancies and...
Yes.
Hotels that rent rooms by the hour?
Okay, my first question, which I did thorough research on you, is that you are a musician who does not like to dance. How's that possible?
Well, I like to dance.
I mean, but you have obviously you have rhythm.
I like to dance a lot. Just
I thought you were going to say I like to dance alone.
Yeah, but I do like to dance. I like to dance so that no one can see me, and that could either mean like in a very dark place, or in a place where I'm by myself. Because when a lot of stand-up comedians will do like the cliched thing about like how white people dance.
Right.
They could be describing me. Like, I am that sad, cliched, inbred white Anglo-Saxon Protestant who loves to dance, but I'm a terrible dancer. So that's why it's just everyone benefits if no one sees me ever trying to dance. Have you ever
thought, now everybody knows on the show I'm a big proponent of dance. I go to dance class 4 days a week. So I believe dancing is life-changing. So have you ever thought of taking a dance class?
Yeah, I mean, I love it, but I just...
So good
I guess it's... I mean, I pretty much have a constant sense of shame for everything that I do. But in some cases, it's really warranted. Like sometimes, like, shame is just sort of like habitual self-deprecation.
Yes, you have that.
Other times, it's justified. Like my shame around dancing is not some irrational, like, facet of self-loathing. It's true justified shame because I'm terrible.
You're like Elaine in a Seinfeld.
I've never seen a Seinfeld episode.
Oh, cut it out.
I've never seen a Seinfeld episode.
Really?
When it was popular, people were like, you should watch Seinfeld. I was like, my friends are funnier.
Really?
Like, why do I want to watch, like, people on TV having mundane conversations that are supposedly funny when my actual friends are way funnier?
That sounds like a Seinfeld episode.
Yeah.
Now, this is my second question, is you are so humble and self-deprecating, and I'm sort of curious about why you are, because it doesn't go along, not that you should be a narcissist, but you've accomplished so much. And when I met you, which was, I don't know the exact year, we met like around, I'm going to take a guess, like 2003 maybe?
Thereabouts.
Yeah, thereabouts. And you were first of all, you were from Connecticut, so I like anyone from Connecticut because it's like, oh, shorthand, you get it. They're all insane. and we take it from there. But you were so truly humble and approachable. And I, found that to be very, I don't know, nice, of course, but, why is that?
Well, assuming you're right and it's not just a ruse. Like, maybe I went to the Learning Annex and took like how to pretend you're not a sociopath classes, like how to feign humility for career advancement. So, but if it's true that I am in fact humble, I think it's one is like growing up poor white trash in a wealthy town.
Right.
Growing up, as you can relate to, like the child of dysfunctional ex-hippies in a conservative Connecticut town. And also, like, I don't know, that I guess it's because I didn't have any success until I was already really like established as an adult. Mm-hmm. Like the first time I sold a bunch of records, I think I was already like 28 years old. And I think, and also what I find, like the people who are really arrogant and narcissistic, it's either hereditary or a product of upbringing. Like maybe they've always felt entitled, but like obviously if you grow up like going to Stop and Shop and like trying to buy cigarettes for your mom with food stamps, like it's real hard to be like fully yourself.
Yeah.
But then also, and I'm trying to say this diplomatically, but like when I encounter arrogant narcissistic people, I'm sort of like, one, you're probably taking credit for stuff that you didn't do, you know, like some of our actor friends. Like, I'm like, well, you didn't write the part, you didn't direct the movie, you showed up and you said some lines, which is great. I'm glad that people do that, but it's not cause for arrogance,
right?
You know. But then there's also the other side of that is people doubting their own value and sort of feeling like whenever someone's like Trumpian in their like constant self-aggrandizement, like clearly there's a core of insecurity there.
Was there, you know, in my growing up, which I talked about in the book, see, I identified with people in the movies. I would pretend that they were my friends, and that one day I was going to meet them and work with them. And,
like Lee Marvin on Madison Avenue.
Yes, exactly. And it would have, you know, and I
had some time to read your book.
And you're fast. And in addition to everything else, you're a fast reader. But that was. And I wonder if part of the reason you're so humble, no one ever said, you know, I didn't grow up in a very loving environment. I mean, the only person who expressed any interest in me was my grandfather. So part of it is there underneath, because I've accomplished a little bit, but like, again, when you're out, I'm always struck by meeting you, the person you are, and then seeing you perform in front of a stadium of people, and it's literally like two different people. You have to have some sense of yourself in order to go out and perform in front of a stadium or travel around the world.
I guess
does that come from you? Did anyone give you any reinforcement, I guess, is what I'm asking?
I mean,
I feel like they didn't. I'm just going to take a guess.
I think I grew up in a weird sort of meritocracy. You know, like I have a lot of friends who were criticized regardless of what they did, you know, from friends, family members, and then a lot of people who were praised regardless of what they did, you know. And I think because everyone in my family was sort of humble and creative, so like when I was growing up, if I did something that was pretty good, my family would say, oh, that's pretty good. If I did something really good, they'd say, oh, that's actually really good. And if I did something mediocre, they'd be like, yeah, it's not your best. So there's like just this, there was a fairness. And I guess, I mean, it's interesting. Like I want to have like a really either like insightful, trenchant, or pithy answer to your, but I feel like I need to spend a little bit more time in like 12-step meetings and therapy before I fully understand.
Well, I feel like so much of Connecticut, and I'm writing about Connecticut right now, is it pertains to the movies. And so much of my childhood growing up was about fitting in, not being different, not looking like everybody else. And so there wasn't any avenues of praise. The only time you were praised is if you had money. You know, that's where, if you got a new car or your dad got a new boat, or you had the latest kind of clothes.
Yeah,
and so
I'm right there with you.
I feel like that environment of never fitting in ever, I just at a certain point I was like, all right, this is going to be possible. So there's a certain freedom.
Which town did you grow up in?
I grew up in a number of towns, but primarily Middletown, Deep River, those towns.
Okay, so like sort of like that's east of New Haven, north of New Haven?
Yeah, I guess Middlesex County.
Because I grew up in Darien mainly.
Yeah, and that's that's the tip of the eye.
As far as like wealth and privilege and waspy inbreeding goes,
yeah.
Darien is ground zero for that. But like we were on food stamps and welfare, and we lived in a garage apartment, my mom and I. And so I grew up with this like crippling sense of inadequacy. Like I didn't have a father. He died when I was 2. We were really poor. We were on food stamps and welfare. My clothes came from Goodwill or the basket of sneakers at Bradley's.
I wrote in my book. The
basket of sneakers. So, but then, so I felt this like constant sense of inadequacy. And then when I was 13 or 14, I discovered a whole bunch of stuff. I discovered punk rock. I discovered 20th century literature. I discovered the early existentialists. I started discovering people who basically musicians, writers, artists who sort of said, oh, that status quo that you're intimidated by is worthless. And the people who hold on to it, they're shallow and vapid. And so I suddenly was rather than feel insecure about being poor and living in a crummy little garage apartment by I-95, suddenly I was like, oh, this is a badge of honor. And that was liberating. And being like, okay, the most interesting people in the world are not praising money. They're not praising conformity. They're praising artistic expression and integrity. And that was, and the fact that I could just get on Metro North and take the train 48 minutes into Grand Central and connect with that. Like, I feel really badly for people who grow up in the middle of nowhere where they have
It was me.
But I mean, you could like go to New Haven, get on Metro North.
No, I couldn't.
Okay.
You'll see. I had to hitchhike.
Well, you could have just hid in the bathroom. That's what I used to do, because I couldn't afford the fare. So I'd get on Metro North and I'd hide. When I saw the conductor, I'd go in the bathroom. And back then, the bathrooms in Metro North are pretty nice now. Back then, they like smelled like rotting hobos. So, but that was the way to get in and out of the city.
Your first band, right?
Rotting hobos. It should have been. Yeah.
Moby, when you talk about some of those early influences, writers, musicians, any specifically come to mind?
I mean, everybody, all the original punk rockers, and then everybody from Camus, Sartre, Bukowski.
Yeah.
Some of this, I really loved the Southern Gothic writers.
Faulkner, Flannery O'Connor. Yeah,
Flannery O'Connor. I realized at one point I was in high school, and a friend of mine pointed out that my biggest cultural crushes were on people who'd killed themselves. I was like, you mean Sylvia Plath?
Yeah, the bell jar.
Or Flannery O'Connor didn't kill herself, but she certainly died young.
Yeah. Ernest Hemingway.
I was like, wow, okay, maybe Camus did or didn't kill himself. Not that I had a crush on him, but like, reading like The Stranger and The Birds and, I mean, I could go on and on. Everybody, and even like filmmakers, like discovering David Lynch, and some of the early experimental filmmakers like John Waters. Like the first time I saw Pink Flamingos, I was like, how is something so terrible and phenomenal at the same time?
Yeah. Maybe John Updike at all? I feel like the kind of person you're criticizing
a little more, more John Cheever.
Yeah.
Like I remember when I think I was like
John Cheever,
a freshman or a sophomore, and I got a collection of John Cheever short stories, and I was like, oh, he's writing about the culture that I've wanted to be a part of, and he's showing that it's all like miserable alcoholics who are cheating on their spouses. And I was like, okay, that's way better than being intimidated by this culture.
Interesting.
So we always ask people if they remember the first movie they saw. Who took you to see it?
So I don't really remember the first movie, but I do remember that I was there.
Okay.
So when I was about 3 years old, my mom took me to San Francisco. And my mom, these have been some complicated years. It was 1969, 68, 69. My father had killed himself when I was 2. My mother went back to college, got her degree, and her graduation present from her parents was a trip to San Francisco. And this was, 68 or 69, so like she brought me with her, which really is, things went wrong. But one of the things I remember, it's one of my first memories, is she and her friends took acid and snuck me into an X-rated movie.
Okay.
So I remember being in the parking lot, and they were like hiding me under their coats so they could sneak me into an X-rated movie. So that, yeah, it's been all downhill since. I mean, actually, it's been downhill since birth. But
did your mother stay single? I feel like your mother and my father should have met. They were both in Connecticut. That would have solved.
I lived in Stratford for a while, so there's a good chance they did.
Would have.
But
anyway.
Yeah, my mother eventually did remarry.
Yes.
A lovely man, but then she died, and he and I are still friendly, but I haven't talked to him in a while.
So how does this? The other thing I read in your book is that you said that you discovered that love does not make you happy, and that every time you tried to get close to someone, you'd have a panic attack. So is that? Does that come from the childhood thing, or is that from the fame part of it, or
like everybody else in Los Angeles and probably other places, like I'm interested in attachment theory. I don't know if. Okay.
I don't know what that is.
Attachment theory is basically when you're growing up, like the first couple of years, your formative years, you, based on how you're treated by your primary caregivers, you develop a type of attachment, which is either like, broadly speaking, like secure attachment, which is no one we know. insecure attachment, disorganized attachment, anxious avoidant. Like there are all these different types of attachment. I just have dysfunctional attachment.
Yeah.
Because when I was growing up, I was raised by alcoholics and drug addicts. So everybody around me was unpredictable. All the adults, all the caregivers. And as a result, I like people, but I truly don't trust them or rely on them. Like I'm like, I love interacting with humans. I'm way happier just being by myself. So like I live alone, I don't date. And a lot of the sort of emotional life I have is through spirituality, through creativity, through activism, through nature, through et cetera, et cetera. Like it's not really through other humans. And that definitely comes from childhood because like I just learned at this early age, like animals I can trust and animals are predictable.
Right.
Humans are utterly unpredictable and don't get attached to them because they'll disappoint you.
Well, that's such a tough thing. So you've given up. So you said you've given up dating.
I haven't really been on a romantic date in over 3 years.
Oh my! I see. Now you're talking my language. I'm just home watching movies on Turner Classic Movies because I feel the same thing. Of even the if I feel like people should just read my book and know what they're getting into.
Yeah.
Because unless you've had that experience, it's very hard to. People can say they understand, but they just don't understand. They don't have a lot of patience.
And dating doesn't make anyone happy. Like I would posit
But
this
it's
that like
supposed to.
I'm
so confused.
And it makes me so sad. Like I have some really good friends who, when they're in a relationship, they feel like they're like either anxious or compromising, and when they're out of a relationship, they're miserable.
Right.
And I'm like, choose one or the other. Like be in a relationship and accept that it sucks and just be happy with the fact that it sucks, or be happy with being single. But like the number of people who are single listening to this or in the world right now who feel bad that they're single, but the next time they're in a relationship, they'll be unhappy with the person they're in the I'm like, you can't win.
But did you ever look, see, because I would look at people's relationships, John Cassavetes and Jenna Rollins, Diane Sawyer and Mike Nichols.
Yeah, but they're annoying.
Are they?
Good, healthy relationships are so. I think healthy relationships are so irritating. Whenever I like go to a party and you see like some like healthy grown-up couple and they're like holding each hands and whatever, I'm like, oh, stop it! Like, come on, go be Charles Bukowski. Go like be dysfunctional and make something interesting. Like,
do you have an ICE contact? Do you know what that is? Like in case of emergency.
I thought it was like
it's
immigration
actually on your phone. That's the closest I have to a relationship.
In case of emergency,
yeah.
Call the coyotes and let them eat me before I get.
You have no emergency contact. Can you think you should have an emergency?
I guess so, but also like you know what?
Who's gonna? We were.
I'm okay. Like if I get hurt, like if I die, that's fine.
She's good at texting if you need an emergency contact.
I mean, I'd probably just like take some pictures for social media. So like people could be like,
and you're dying.
Yeah,
just tweet.
Like that's the best use of my dying life.
My last selfie.
Yeah,
the last selfie.
Yeah.
The last thing I'm going to ask you about this, just because I'm fascinated, because I never got as far in a relationship to go to couples therapy, and my only impression of it is in movies. But is it really as silly as it seems?
I mean,
you said you went in. This is in your book. You went to.
I went and I was in a very dysfunctional relationship.
Did I ever meet the person? Or?
I don't know.
We were in a fake movie relationship. Yeah. It was very successful.
Yeah, it's one of the best relationships I ever had.
Thank you. Thank you.
And so I was in this really dysfunctional relationship. Like I was a crazy alcoholic, crazy drug addict. And we went to couples therapy as like a last ditch effort to try and save the relationship that clearly wasn't working.
Okay.
And I truly thought that we were going to this therapist on Central Park West, and we were going to walk in, and the therapist was going to look at me and say like, oh, Moby, you are so sane and so well adjusted. How do you put up with this crazy person? That was not what he said. Instead, he said, you should probably come in for therapy on your own 3 times a week. Uh-huh. And I realized in this moment, I was like, oh, all of the relationship problems we're having,
yeah,
they're my fault. And it was kind of an interesting, like I wasn't the sane, stable one. I was like the crazy alcoholic who was like promiscuous and terrible. Like I was the problem. And so couples therapy was good. we ended the relationship on better terms than if we hadn't gone to couples therapy, and I started going to therapy on my own.
So you don't feel any guilt about failing at relationships? I feel.
No, I think it's great.
I feel tremendous regret that I.
If I sort of feel like if you're happy-ish with where you are right now, and if you like your perspective on things, you can't be too upset about any of the circumstances that have led to that perspective.
Right.
And I really love my perspective. So like I can't, when I look back at my past, like the mistakes I've made, I'm like, you know what? They've all led me to where I am right now.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful. I know I sound like some like cliched middle-aged 12-step guy, but like I actually am pretty grateful for the perspective I have. Not necessarily the life that I have, but the perspective I have.
Well, I remember when I lived in New York, now this might be a problem with your dating. Now, this was when you invited me to, again, one of the craziest nights. I don't even understand. You called me up and you said a friend of yours who is a magician was having like a little thing, but there was also going to be some journalists there writing about it. And did I want to go? And I went. And Al Sharpton it was like a weird dream that you would talk about later.
Well, also, Chris Hines, who was John Kerry's son, was there. There were some other people that I remember this night so well. It was my friend John Kramer's loft. He was like the last artist who lived in Soho, and he had this.
He seemed pretty crazy.
Yeah, but that was one of those nights. Yeah, so Al Sharpton was there, and my friend JB did magic for you and Al Sharpton.
You kept leaving the room repeatedly, as I recall.
To do drugs and drink. Yeah.
That's what I figured, but again, I'm from Connecticut, so I would never sound like. I have a feeling I know what's going on. But I was very polite.
I mean, the redeeming part is my friend JB is a very gifted magician. So and also, I mean, I almost feel like it's better to have
like. You left me alone with Al Sharpton, though. The magician.
That's safe.
The magic part was okay. That was very unnerving. I mean, have a lot to say to him.
Yeah, Al. I got to know Al a little bit. He was always very nice. Not the most conversational guy.
Thank you.
Like a little on the quiet side.
Thank you.
So old movies. Are we going to wait? Because do we talk about movies?
Yeah, please talk about movies. I just had to bring that up because I thought it was one of those, funny things that only happens in New York.
It has a sort of like Jim Jarmusch meets Fellini quality to it. Yeah.
Yes, it always had. It was all those those heady New York days. But little did I know what was going on. So yes, you were mentioning talking about movies. Here's my question. In the midst of all of this, when you're doing the drugs and alcohol, did you find solace ever in movies, books, music, or did you start to get away because you were famous and touring? And
no, I found great comfort, solace, and insight in movies and books and music. Because especially as I was really bottoming out as an alcoholic and a drug addict, I didn't want to get sober. I wanted to stay drunk and high forever. Mm-hmm. And but there was a lot of narcissism behind it. I wanted to walk into a party and have everyone love me. Fellini-esque, like Woody Allen meets Fellini.
But everybody did love you.
But some didn't.
Oh, really?
But I wanted lunatic levels of affirmation from other people.
Uh-huh.
And as that waned, I started to get really upset. And then I had a lot of experiences with people, with books, with movies, where I realized meaning and happiness and contentedness can be found outside of cocaine and ecstasy and Xanax and Vicodin and vodka and egregious narcissism. Mm-hmm. I had this one wonderful epiphany. It would have been 2007. It was about a year before I got sober, and I met David Lynch for the first time. And he said something so simple that really impacted me. Mm-hmm. He was being interviewed, and the journalist was trying to be clever. And David Lynch said something so simple. He looked at the journalist and he said, "Creativity is beautiful." Because, sometimes David talks like a child.
Right.
And it really struck me. I was like, oh, he's right. I was dedicating myself to going out and drinking and doing drugs and being a stupid puerile narcissist. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, what he's talking, creativity, spirituality, health, connection with other people, even though that's weird, is so much more valuable than the stuff I was dedicating myself to.
But what about the feeling of, again, the initial success that you had exceeds all of your, it had to exceed all of your expectations of what?
Oh, my expectations were so low. Like if we had met when I was 16 or 17 and we'd been like sharing our goals and our dreams, I would have said, okay, my biggest dream is to someday live in Manhattan in an apartment,
right,
and maybe put out a 7-inch single. That was it. Beyond that, I had nothing. So like the universe, I don't know I don't want to anthropomorphize the universe, but it gave me so much more than I ever even thought to hope for.
Right.
And the more attached I got to it, the more it took it away. Which is a pretty good object lesson.
But what is that feeling? Because I'm just an observer. This was before I even met you. One of the movies I did, the next best thing, they used your songs. It was in every gym. You'd walk into a gym and you'd hear your music. I had a painter friend named Richmond Burton, be playing your music and painting, and so I just. That to me, you have to have some feeling of either panic of, I have to outdo myself, or a sense of accomplishment that you've.
I'd say like panic and bemusement. Like on one hand, it's nice to make music that people like, and it's nice, but the bemusement of, this is weird. I've been making music for a long time. Which is, I tend to make music in a very sort of like cloistered monastic way. Like I'm by myself in my studio and I made a lot of music, some of which connects, some of which doesn't. And it's very odd, especially like you mentioned earlier, like being in a stadium, performing in front of hundreds of thousands of people. Sometimes what I'll think if I'm in that environment is, well, this is funny because I'm playing a song that I wrote by myself, like at 3:00 in the morning, and I never expected anyone to hear. And now there's 100,000 people singing along.
Right.
I was like, that's weird. It's nice, but it's more weird than anything else.
What was the idea behind, because I always thought what set your music apart when I first started hearing it was these background operatic vocals, almost like, Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, these like, aching, so I'm curious about that and where you found the singers and how you incorporated them.
Yeah, I guess going back to like attachment theory, that idea that when you're growing up, you look for attachment, and if you can't find it anywhere, you become like a broken Eastern European orphan, which is sad and tragic, but you become like a sociopath who has no emotional connection to anything. But I learned at an early age, like my emotional connection wasn't going to be with people, it was going to be with animals, with nature, and with music, art, creativity. And so as a musician, I kept looking for that emotional connection, and I would find it in vocals, instrumentals as well. But then I started making electronic music, and I'm not a great singer, and I needed vocals. So I just started scouring the world for either singers or pre-recorded vocals that I could sample, but just looking for the emotional connection, and that's I think one of the only things that does potentially separate me from a lot of other musicians is I think a lot of musicians are concerned with like making music that, and I don't mean this in a derisive way, I'm not trying to criticize anyone, but like they want to make music that is pleasant, that, I don't know, that's cool, that, fits whatever else is going on. And for me, music has always been sacred because it represents emotional connection.
Did you have any kind of religious upbringing at all? Or?
My mom was a weird pantheist who liked Krishnamurti and the Tao Te Ching, and then I was a punk rock atheist. Then I became a very serious Christian for a little while. I was a Taoist for a while because I had a crush on a girl who was a Taoist.
Always happens.
Yeah.
Those crazy.
But then
Taoists.
I was a serious Christian for about 8 years. And then I looked at the complexity of the universe, and I was like, oh, none of these belief systems make any sense in a universe that's 14 billion years old and vast beyond our imagining.
Yeah.
So they're cute. They can be used as obviously ways of controlling a lot of people, or they can have like a good utility, which is like getting people to be kind and forgiving and non-judgmental. But the moment anyone tries to say that their belief system has primacy over anyone else's, or their idea of God somehow is objective, I'm like, you're a human being who's alive for a couple of decades. You know nothing. You know how we can't make as humans objective statements about anything, let alone the architect of the universe.
This is almost impossible to answer, but I think I know the components of a good movie, but what do you have any theories about the components of what makes a good song?
This is what's great about music. It can be anything.
Right.
I was actually just texting with a friend of mine. We were trying to think of the simplest songs ever written. And you think of something like Bohemian Rhapsody, which is not, it's the opposite of a simple song, or Stairway to Heaven. But then you think of Drop It Like It's Hot by Snoop Dogg. Has one note. Right. It doesn't even have music in it. Or like Boogie Chillin' by John Lee Hooker. It's one chord, no drums.
Right.
You know, and so like music, that idea that music can be anything. I mean, film as well, but like when film deviates too far from sort of like conventional narrative structure, it loses an audience. Whereas music can, you know, like can be super experimental and still have an audience. You mentioned film, dear. Are there any films out now that you're into or that you're going to see? Or that you watch for go-to, like what's your go-to? My go-to, I have
go-to cult movies, or you mentioned David Lynch.
A movie that I've watched many times, and I said two of my favorites are Bringing Up Baby,
Connecticut,
and My Man Godfrey.
Oh. That's my dog. Remember Godfrey?
Yeah. So My Man Godfrey is one of the most wonderful movies. So like, if I can't think of anything to watch, it'll be like, well, 30 Rock or My Man Godfrey. But then obviously like Fire Walk with Me, Inland Empire, like a lot of David Lynch's more experimental movies.
Yeah.
I'd say every couple of years I go back and revisit Lord of the Rings. Because like Stephen Colbert, I was an obsessive Lord of the Rings Tolkien fan growing up. So like, but I like now, even like The Godfather 1, Godfather 2, not Godfather 3 because it's unwatchable.
Yes.
But like, enough time passes where you can go back and revisit your favorite books, revisit your favorite movies, you know, because I'm old, so I start forgetting stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's my favorite thing, when you can go back, and I do that all the time, reread books. You mentioned Cheever. This summer I reread all my John Cheever. He's just fantastic.
Well, it's funny because when I was writing my first memoir, I went out and read a whole bunch of memoirs and autobiographies to be inspired by either what they did well or did badly.
Right.
And you realize, as I'm sure you've experienced, most memoirs are really bad. They're either dull or like just narcissistic and mundane. Like especially when musicians start writing about like, oh, well, I tuned the guitar this way. I'm like, shut up, no one cares.
Right.
They're like, when we were making this record, we decided to go to Nashville and use this. I was like, stop it, no one cares. Like so. Realizing a memoir should not be mundane and too self-involved, even though by definition.
Well, it's hard to, when I wrote my book, I too read a lot of books, and I love David Niven's books because they were stories.
Yeah.
And they had a beginning, a middle, and an end. And the tendency is to get into, and then I did this, and then I did this, and then I won this.
It's like when you write about like what I did on my summer vacation when you're in third grade. Like I went to Billy's house and we had sandwiches. Then we went to the pool and it was fun. And then we came home and the dog sneezed and it was fun. And then I went home and like that's not how you write a memoir. So, but my point was that John Cheever's, the autobiography or journals of John Cheever, that as far as memoir writing goes, that's my inspiration. Because I don't know if you've read them.
I haven't read his autobiography, no.
It was published after he died.
Yes,
it's so.
Didn't his daughter publish them? I think
they're so beautifully written.
Oh, okay.
But there is an honesty in them that at times it makes your head spin. Like he writes about the worst parts of himself and the most dysfunctional parts of himself and stuff that most people would never share. And I sort of thought to myself, like, okay, if John cheever, arguably one of the like 2 or 3 greatest writers that the United States has produced, if he's capable of being this honest,
right?
I was like, when I write my memoir, I should at least aspire to be that honest.
And was it cathartic? There were certain parts of my book that when I wrote, I did have revelations about myself. It was very cathartic. I would cry just at I tell everyone they should write a book, even if they don't publish it.
I agree.
Even if they're not anyone, because you will have cathartic revelations and you end up liking yourself a lot. I ended up liking myself a lot more after reading the book. I kind of gave myself more of a break. Did you have those?
Yeah, there's something about, because like when we think about our, most people, when we think about our past, we tend to think like quick little snapshots.
Right.
Or if you're talking about your past, we tend to tell the same stories over and over again. When you write a memoir, you can't do either one of those things. You have to like fully immerse yourself in the past. And if enough time has gone by, you can regain some objectivity. And so for me, it was really interesting going back and writing about myself like as a child, as a young adult, and having perspective and objectivity that I'd never had when I was going through stuff.
Was there anything that you left out, or?
I left out anything that made other people look bad. Like
that's tough.
I didn't want to grind any axes. So I included some stuff that's ambiguous. I included some stuff where people might not have looked great, but I tried to actually be like as respectful of other, like I didn't want to throw anyone else under the bus. I throw myself under the bus constantly in both books, but like I didn't want to criticize anyone else. There were a couple times where I did, but I sort of had to. And even then I sort of downplayed just how terrible some of those people really were.
That era of New York in the 80s and 90s, I mean, would you ever think about making a series about it?
Oh, we tried. We took the book everywhere.
Oh, really?
And it got rejected everywhere.
Oh, why is that?
I don't know. Maybe
timing.
I mean, a lot of reasons. People don't like me. I don't know. But like it. No, we went to every streaming service, every studio, every production place, and we pretty much just got like rejected or shot down everywhere. It was also, unfortunately...
But they did vinyl. Somebody did vinyl.
You know, it's funny that you mention that. You might be psychic, because that's a big reason why people told us they didn't want to do it. Like, when we went to HBO, the guy at HBO actually said, wow, you know, we like this story, but, you know, vinyl really tanked. So he said, verbatim, he said, we're not doing music anymore. And I was like, really? I mean, obviously now things might have changed, but I'm like, you know what? I think that ship has sailed.
Well, you can always come back to it. Now, in your videos, you always played around with a lot of, with filmmaking and your acting in the videos. Was Pittsburgh the movie that the little improv movie that we did with Jeff Goldblum? Was that your first like film experience?
That's the first time. Okay, in high school, I was in. I had a brief cameo in high school. I wanted more, but I was a bad actor. So I remember Nancy Herman, the director of this play, she like politely put me in. I think it was some Samuel Beckett play. I think you're a
great actor. That's so interesting.
But so I had a little cameo in a Samuel Beckett play in high school, and then Pittsburgh. I think that was the first time I acted after that. And since then, I've shown up in a bunch of things.
Yes,
but I'm like, it's nice because I don't want to be an actor, and I don't think of myself as an actor. So if people ask me to act, I'm like, sure, because it's not my job, so it's fun.
Right.
So like Pittsburgh was really fun because I was not thinking of this as like, I wasn't trying to launch a career. I was just like, oh, this will be fun. I get to meet Jeff Goldblum, who was in the greatest movie of all time, Into the Night.
Yes. So to go back to Pittsburgh, which was this kind of Christopher Guest movie that I did with Jeff Goldblum, and it centered around him wanting to, which was all true, he wanted to be in The Music Man in Pittsburgh, and he wanted to film it, so we all had to come up with devices as to why we were in the movie. So I was actually in The Music Man in Pittsburgh. So I thought it would be funny, because we were palling around, to have you be in the movie, and that you wanted to write a hip-hop version of Gary, Indiana, as depicted in the film.
And one of the reasons I enjoyed acting in that so much is I got to be really terrible.
Yeah,
like a caricature
of yourself.
A caricature, but even I was just like disgusting. You know, like
we did other scenes that didn't make it in the movie. I was really upset because I thought you were excellent in the film.
Well, that's kind of you to say.
You were very, you were. I mean, you weren't intimidated by Jeff at all. I didn't think.
I think it's.
I
don't know if it's years and years of like doing interviews, making videos, whatever. It's you develop this level of sort of like detachment and comfort when you know you're being filmed, and I think that's. 'Cause I remember the first 20 times I did an interview and there was a camera, I was frozen. But then eventually, I imagine it's a strange analogy, perhaps. It's kind of like being like a murderer or a prostitute, where like the first few times you kill someone or have sex with a stranger, it's probably uncomfortable. But then like when you're doing it like the 30th or 40th time, you're like, whatever. Like I've done this before.
That's true. Yeah.
Our years of killing people and being prostitutes.
So do you remember, so in the film, one of my favorite scenes in the movie is you were in fact being honored in Coney Island. You were, what was your title?
Oh, the mermaid parade. Yeah, that was really funny.
So you were the head of the mermaid.
King Neptune.
Yeah.
My friend Theo was Queen Neptune or whatever. Queen Mermaid, I guess. Yeah.
Yes. And so what we were so I asked you, would you participate in pretending to break up with me? We're, in the movie, supposedly. And so we're filming scenes with me talking to Jeff about my relationship going bad with Moby. And then I go to visit you at this parade. And there were thousands of people there.
Tens of thousands of people. I'm dressed like King Neptune, but in like a bathrobe and like some crappy hat from a Halloween store. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. And I mean, I was also, this was pre-sobriety, so I was very hungover, and it was super hot, and I'm getting pulled through the streets of Coney Island. And we shot this scene where like I'm trying to like be King Neptune on the beach of Coney Island, surrounded by all these like weird people from the freak show, while we're having our breakup conversation. Yeah, it was as far as like Fellini-esque cinema verite, it was pretty solid.
I mean, this is, with no social media around. I asked Moby, I couldn't believe he did it, but I said, would you pretend to, and would you break up with me in the middle of the parade? Like, there could be nothing meaner than me. Hi, honey, I've come to visit you at the parade. And he says, it's not working out. I'm not going to go to Pittsburgh.
That was...
And people, what I recall, I mean, I was like, my heart was racing. And I remember talking to you afterwards about that. You said, I feel so bad. It was like some crazy, because people were like, not cool, Moby. Yeah, like, not cool. They thought he was such a jerk that he was breaking up with me.
I guess they didn't notice the fact that there was a camera there, but,
They didn't see, well, I think because within the chaos, they just figured the camera was part of the parade.
Yeah, that was really awesome.
But that was a wonderful. But you seemed to be like horrified and exhilarated at the same time afterwards.
I mean, I think that's just like life in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Like horrified, exhilarated, and ultimately tired.
But then after you did, I thought we were going to launch the career of Moby after that.
The actor?
Yes.
Yeah, but the other thing
I thought you just did such a funny persona and that you were willing to poke fun at yourself. And
so every other time I've tried to act, there's one big problem.
Yes.
Like my friend, Jonathan Ames? So Jonathan Ames is a writer. He wrote the show Bored to Death.
Oh, okay.
And
yes, I know that.
Wrote a show called Blunt Talk with Patrick Stewart, and he cast me as Patrick Stewart's younger nemesis. And so I got to act with Patrick Stewart. The problem being, I never learned any lines.
Were you supposed to? Or?
Yeah. Oh. Because I realized that when people write scenes, they want the scene to go somewhere. And I just thought like, we're just going to make this up and it'll be fun.
Yeah.
And so that's one of my problems as an erstwhile actor.
Right.
Is I just like the idea of like, this is improv. And I kept... like the directors and the script supervisors were like, we really kind of need you to say the lines. And I was like, yeah, but the lines are kind of dull. Like, couldn't we just make stuff up and make it more like, so I don't know if I could ever be in something where I actually had to like read someone's lines, because like they would give me scripts, and I, to be honest with you, wouldn't even really look at them.
Oh, see,
and that was and I realized, like there are a lot of people here, and they're trying to make something. Like I'm the problem, even though I think I'm being pretty excellent right now by being funny. They're like, you might be funny, it's not leading us to where we need the scene to go.
The reason I like that experience so much, and I like improving, and I like this, was that it just, again, it threw the whole, really felt like guerrilla filmmaking. You know, I like that idea of throwing. It was very. Oh,
it's so much fun. And if all acting was that, just like someone turns on a camera and says, "Go do stupid stuff," then I would love to be an actor.
I want to talk. We have a couple pictures. This is us at this moveon.org.
Okay.
Back in the, and I wanted you to talk about moveon.org because they were just such a politically, they're great. What are they doing now? This is you breaking up with me for saying, Illeana, stop stalking me. I'm sorry about the...
Minus the King Neptune costume. I don't know. I haven't talked to anyone from Move On in a long time.
Oh, you haven't?
I mean, as far as activism goes, there are a lot of organizations I work with.
What are some of the others? There's so many. Obviously, you're...
Because I mainly work on the animal rights side.
Yes. How's that going? How are we doing in California?
Good compared to... I mean, like, I've been a vegan now for 31 years.
Yes.
And now, I mean, obviously, look at like the rise of movies like What the Health and Game Changers, products like An Impossible Burger, Beyond Meat, and everybody from like Beyonce and Bill Clinton being quasi-vegan. So like,
and Cory Booker, isn't he a vegan?
Yeah, Cory's an old friend. I've known Cory since before he was the mayor of Newark.
So we should vote for him just because he's a vegan. Who else is it? What other politicians are vegan?
Unfortunately, Adam Schiff is.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, he's a vegan. Really? He comes in my restaurant, Little Pine. We become friendly. I
love that.
I don't want to get in trouble, but there's a complicated politician, Tulsi Gabbard. She's also
all right.
She's vegan. She's a weirdo.
She's a vegan?
Yeah. So
I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, it's a little odd. So in terms of activism, a lot of animal rights organizations, political organizations, but like Emily's List, who are so effective at getting women elected. And what else? I have my own little foundation. We're in the process. This is so grown up and boring. We're in the process of converting it from a private foundation to a public foundation. That's as much as I'll say because anything else is so dull. Like I just feel like people probably already started turning off the podcast the moment they hear like, well,
kidding?
It's I have a 501c3 and I'm in the process of converting it from private foundation to a public foundation, and really it's ostensibly fair. It's a fairly simple process, Illeana. But and
don't worry, I'm going to get to you.
Like the main thing I'm really focused on is climate change and the intersection of animal agriculture and climate change, because animal agriculture is the third leading cause of climate change.
Right.
And whenever there are these big confabs about climate change, they don't mention animal agriculture. Like at COP21, there was not a single seminar about animal agriculture and climate change. It's the third leading cause. I was with Al Gore, and he talks about animal agriculture and climate change. He says animal agriculture is the true inconvenient truth. Like you can get people to buy electric cars, you can get people to swap out their light bulbs. He says it's really hard to get people to stop eating the food that their parents brought them up eating.
Yeah, I find that really, they can't do a couple days a week. That seems crazy to me.
It seems that's... Yeah,
just 2 days a week.
Like I've been a full-time vegan for 31 years, but like I feel like people should just like try to do better than they're currently doing,
Yeah.
For health reasons, for environmental reasons, for animal rights reasons, like just you don't have to go from being like someone who eats 5 bacon cheeseburgers a day to someone who's suddenly just eating quinoa and kale. Like there's a middle ground that I think people might be pretty happy with.
I think the only problem is the Impossible Burger is more money than which I don't know why the Impossible Burgers cost
lack of subsidies. And this is where I could really lose a lot of people.
Oh boy, okay.
But basically, federal, state, and local tax subsidies to animal agriculture, it's tens of billions of dollars a year. If you removed subsidies to animal agriculture, a family of 4 going to McDonald's would cost about $80.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So that's one of the reasons why animal food is so cheap, is because it's so heavily subsidized.
Okay, I want to go back to something that was in your book. This is a quote. Suddenly you were hanging out with David Bowie, Lou Reed, Christina Ricci, Madonna, taking ecstasy for breakfast most days, drinking liters of vodka. That sounds sleeping with supermodels sometimes.
So this is like the blur. This is the promotional material.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it fell apart. But I was like, it sounds pretty. Was there some element that you go, well, at least I did it? Because you looked fantastic for someone who did all of that. I mean, I would be way too vain to be doing all of that. So, do you think that the veganism protected you?
I was actually talking. I don't want to get in trouble, so I'm not going to name names. I was talking to a public figure who's in sobriety, and he was saying, like, when he was out drinking and doing tons of drugs, like, he would wake up in the morning and have like bacon cheeseburgers and smoke cigarettes and eat garbage. And when I would wake up after, like, because an average night for me before I got sober, I'd have between like 15 and 20 drinks, a couple $100 worth of cocaine, Xanax, Vicodin, and this was sort of like on almost a daily basis. Mm-hmm. But I'd wake up in the afternoon, so I'd go to sleep around 9 or 10, wake up around 5, and I would have like a spirulina smoothie with organic, like, broccoli sprouts and ginger. And I think that's the only thing that saved me, is that I was like a healthy vegan while I was like filling my body with vodka and cocaine.
That's so funny. Now, were you ever at a party where everyone was there and they all had one name? Like, I'm imagining you, and it's Madonna, Bono, Moby. You're all at
probably. Yeah, actually, I mean, like.
And is there any humor? Like, I worked with Madonna, and I love her, but she
doesn't laugh a lot.
She's sort of humorless about the whole situation. And so, again, getting back to you, you're so normal. There's an element of you that is so approachable and normal.
Also, because, I mean, like, regarding.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
So yes, I've been to a lot of those sort of like first name only events where like Bono meet Salman,
I
know, like, hey, Sting meet Nora, like, but the other thing is, I guess it's the idea of.
That's my fantasy, to be
like public figures, and we're all guilty. I take myself too seriously a lot of times, but like, it's worth remembering, like, I don't run a needle exchange. Mm-hmm. I don't have a PhD in bioengineering. Like, there's like stuff that I feel like the people who should really take themselves seriously are like the people at MIT who are mapping the genome and figuring out how to create quantum computers. Like, not some bald guy who wrote a couple of songs. Like, to put it in perspective, like, it's a pretty low bar. You know, like, you just happen to write a couple of songs that like connected for a minute. So it's really hard to like feel too arrogant regarding that.
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think see, you did it again. Connected for a minute. Why are you so self-deprecating? Said the doctor. Yeah. I was told I was too self-deprecating, but then I tried to not, and I had nothing to say. I was, it might just be a Connecticut thing. Tend to downplay.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, like, or you could go the Ricky Gervais approach and be like comedically arrogant.
Yeah, you're right.
He's really good at it. I just couldn't do that.
Yeah, I don't cotton to that. But now, going back to these one-name parties, who were some of the people you got to know? David Bowie. I mean, that must have been incredible.
That was because he was my favorite musician when I was growing up.
And that's crazy.
And then in 2000, I think 99 or 2000, like, we'd met a couple of times, and I think it was in 2000. My manager at the time asked me, he said, I just got the weirdest request. He said, David Bowie was asking me for your email address. Can I give it to him? And I was like, of course. So then the next day I get an email from David Bowie, and he says, oh, hi, hope you don't mind I'm writing. I was like, of course not. You're David Bowie. You can do anything. And he said, I just want to let you know, we're neighbors. Aww. He had moved in across the street from me in the Lower East Side. And he said, just want to know if now that we're neighbors, if you ever want to meet up and get coffee. So we became neighborhood pals. Like, we'd go for walks in the neighborhood. We'd work on music together. Wow. We had lots of dinners together. My favorite David Bowie story that I included in the book is we had been asked to play at a fundraiser for Tibet House, and it was going to be at Carnegie Hall. And so I brazenly asked David, I said, do you think we should do Heroes together? Like maybe an acoustic version of Heroes? Because I'd never heard him do Heroes acoustically. And I thought he'd say absolutely not. And so he was like, sure, okay. So he came over one morning. It was like 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning. He shows up at my apartment with coffee. And we sat on my couch in the sun and played an acoustic version of Heroes together. And I think Heroes is arguably the greatest song ever written.
Yeah.
And so there I am, sitting on my couch, just me and David Bowie playing an acoustic version of the greatest song ever written.
Wow, that's pretty great. I can't imagine anything. And you must have, as you said, letters. And we were talking at the top of the show about preservation. Preservation's very important to me.
I saved almost nothing, which is real.
You're kidding. What about phone messages?
I haven't saved, I had some really good ones. Like at one point, I was slated to produce a Guns N' Roses record, and so I had like some phone back and forth with Axl, and at one point, are we allowed to swear on this?
I think you can say.
I think you can. How bad
okay,
is
because
it?
there's a lot of swears.
It's digital. You're fine.
So I had what I thought was a really funny, and I know this is going to offend someone because we live in this culture where everyone's offended by everything. So I had this funny, what I thought was an outgoing message. My message was, "Hi, you've reached the International Center for Tourette's. Motherfucker, piece of shit, suck my own dick, fuck, 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 fuck." That was my outgoing message.
Okay.
And Axl called, and then the message that he left was a minute of laughing hysterically. All it was just laughing. At the end, he was like, "This is Axl, call me." So I wish I had saved that, because it's just 45 seconds of him laughing hysterically, because to be fair, my outgoing message was pretty hysterical.
I
I know now that like the International Tourette Society is going to like cancel me for trying to be funny.
Well, again, back in the day, it was very important to have a funny outgoing message. I would work, when we actually had big phones and things, you work on keeping them. Now, I'm so obsessed with phone messages. I kept all of your phone. I felt so silly. I hadn't seen you in a number of years, and I just saw you at a party, and that's why I always worry about myself. Like, they're going to go, "She's insane. What do you mean you kept all my phone messages, you lunatic?"
No, I wish I'd saved. I mean, because I had like phone messages from Lou Reed. I had all sorts of phone messages from
Moby.
David Bowie, and I saved nothing.
You never thought, I'm such a I don't know why it's in me. It's
I wish I had, like, growing up, like, all the, like, my punk rock band flyers. I did save a bunch of photographs.
Right.
But just by accident, like, threw them in a box, so they're there. But
well, for instance, one of the messages that I because I hadn't listened to in years, but I actually kept the phone too, because I'm insane. Mm-hmm. So I have the phone with all the messages, and then I back it up. I record everything, and it's on a hard drive, and then I'm still afraid, so I keep the actual phone.
Yeah.
And I plugged in the phone, and I was listening to all these messages, my God, from 2003. But you had called me, which was already funny, backstage at the David Letterman show. And you were on with Charles Grodin.
Because I know you love Charles Grodin.
No, and your message, what was funnier was, again, what makes you funny is you have a very deadpan delivery. You have a kind of a Greta Garbo, "I want to be alone." You're like, I'm backstage at David Letterman, and Charles Grodin is here, and I know you're obsessed with him. And I laugh because I am obsessed with Charles Grodin, but I wasn't aware until somebody, because I tell everyone about The Heartbreak Kid. Now, that's my movie. Unless you like The Heartbreak Kid, I cannot be friends with you. What
if, in my case, you haven't seen The Heartbreak Kid?
Then that's okay. But if you see it and you don't think it's funny, it would be very hard for us to be friends.
I mean, yeah, culturally, I understand that. Like, there's certain things that people do like that make me not want to be friends with them.
Can you give me an example?
Scrubs.
Ooh. Hot
Sorry.
take.
No, that's so funny.
I watched like 5 minutes of one. I was like, what? No, this is.
Well, I have to be careful because I've already trashed John C. McGinley on that.
I don't know anything about it. I just know that the 5 minutes I watched, I was like, no. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe if I watched more, I would like it. But
yeah,
because the reason I mentioned Scrubs is I don't read comments about me. Mm-hmm. I don't read reviews. I don't watch myself on TV. I don't like to know anything about myself other than like I go to Gelson's and buy blueberries. So, but one time
we have a Yelp review of that.
So this was about 15 years ago or 12 years ago. I'd put out a record, and this one guy on some like, I don't know, some newspaper in Milwaukee or something gave it a terrible review. And I went to his Facebook page to see who this person was. And he listed his favorite band was Nickelback and his favorite TV show was Scrubs. And I was like, so why am I upset that this guy doesn't like me? You know, like it's a badge of honor if his favorite band is Nickelback and his favorite show is Scrubs. The fact that if he did like me, I should be really concerned.
Yes, I think
Nothing
so.
wrong. I'm not trying to like offend Nickelback or Scrubs fans, but like I don't personally relate to that music and or culture.
Right. Well, you already said you're not going to be in any relationships, but for example, if a person did not like my man Godfrey, would you?
It would be. I
would find them suspect.
It'd be challenging because it's. I mean, I've had instances like that where like.
I hate that.
Like a song comes on. I actually had once. I was on a date, and I was in a bar. This is pre-sobriety, and it was like a first date. It wasn't going great, but it was going okay. And one of my songs came on. And my date, I'm not kidding, said, the music here is terrible. Do you want to go somewhere else? While one of my songs was playing. And I just started laughing and laughing. I was like, I thought it was hysterical.
The one of your favorite, one of my favorite songs of yours is "We're All Made of Stars," and recently you performed and you did a more kind of an acoustic-y version of that.
Yeah, sure.
I thought that was very interesting. What was your inspiration for that song?
It's
very cinematic.
It's about quantum physics.
Okay.
And celebrities.
Okay.
You know, because on a quantum level, I think there are only 2 elements on the periodic table of elements that don't come from stars.
Yeah.
I think it's like, and any physicist or chemist listening is going to get mad at me, but I think it's hydrogen and helium. Mm-hmm. I could be wrong. Maybe it's lithium, helium.
Yeah.
Those are the only 2 elements that were not formed in stars. Mm-hmm. Everything else from like carbon to lead to oxygen all actually came from the furnace of a star. So like all matter comes from stars.
Mm-hmm. But then you equate it also with
celebrities, yeah.
And what was the idea around the musical part of it? How do you form, because so much of your music is in I don't want to say the wrong thing, overlaying, it's this element, it's like piling on different things until it reaches a certain crescendo.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's like making
just experimenting
a cake or something. I just throw stuff in there.
You put something in, you go, oh, bongo, it doesn't work. And you put something else. Did you ever work with like a mellotron or any of those fun, goofy things?
Mellotrons are very so to anyone listening, a mellotron is a weird instrument that you play tape loops.
Yes.
And it's very persnickety. There's a reason why they don't make them anymore. And like, I know what's her name? A friend of mine has 2 of them, and she just stopped using them because they're so like they're really idiosyncratic and hard to actually like get them to work right.
Aren't they used? And then the Beatles use them.
The Beatles, yes. Emerson, Lake and Palmer, like all the classic rock bands use them a lot. Led Zeppelin, and they sound phenomenal, but they're so cantankerous and they break down all. I rented one once, and I was like, please never like. It sounds great, but it's just too complicated.
It even has things like, funny whistle sounds. And
you can get anything.
You know who brought one to America before the Beatles was Jerry Lewis.
Okay.
Isn't that crazy? Because he was into
sound. He seems like a happy person.
Well, he spent a lot of time alone. That's all he did. He was alone. He was alone in his studio, working on all of his little.
I got to say that. I know that a lot of people, it's a very revered canonical movie, but The King of Comedy is pretty special. Like it's the only Jerry Lewis movie that I truly love.
Yeah, I think it's and he did well. Again, going back to he did a lot of improv in that.
Yeah, and also, I mean, like I'm still waiting, like many people, to see The Day the Clown Cried. I don't know why he just doesn't release it. Come on.
It is going to be released.
Really?
Yes.
And I'm sure it's going to be like a big letdown. We're going to be like, what was the big deal? Like,
I think so too.
A clown juggling toast in a gas chamber at Auschwitz. Like,
Yeah, I think the issue is more that it's incomplete as opposed to being, like a painting on velvet. I think that's sort of the issue, because from what I understood, there's certain elements of it. It was shot in Sweden. They used interesting actors, and a lot of it is actually on the internet, little pieces. But my understanding, and I knew Mr. Lewis, is that it is supposed to be released on the anniversary of his 100th birthday.
Okay.
The print that he has was given to the Library of Congress. So,
yeah, a friend of mine was doing some work for Martin Scorsese and said that she was poking around, and apparently she saw the reel of The Day the Clown Cried, like a 16 millimeter print somewhere in one of his closets, and she was so tempted to steal it. But she didn't.
Well, Marty is a lunatic about preservation and films and things.
Yeah.
God bless him. I'm trying to get movies that I was in preserved. Just because I don't know. I think that the Academy. I feel like that the ASCAP and people like that, they are much more aware of preservation. Tapes. Wasn't there a big horrible fire though at Universal?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm as long as something's on MP3 on Spotify, I'm okay.
Really?
Because I did something last year that no, this is going to sound like I'm bragging. So I took all of my equipment, or 99% of my equipment, all of my vinyl. I had the world's biggest collection of antique drum machines, and I sold everything and gave it all to the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, this charity that I work with. It's basically vegan doctors. And so it was really, it's almost the opposite of what you do, where I took everything that I'd collected, sold it, and gave the money away. And it felt great. Because I had a storage locker filled with stuff. And I think I still have another storage locker in Queens that has some amazing stuff. I have the 2-inch tape for Beat It, Michael Jackson's Beat It. Because I did a remix of it a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I got to go through that and figure out if there's anything there that people would want as well. But getting rid of stuff. So I'm the opposite. Preservation, I'm I don't really need the original tape that I recorded something to. As long as I can hear it, I'm fine.
I want to preserve it in order to give it to the right people that at least have it. I just love history. I personally just love history and looking at tactile things.
Yeah.
And, I just find it fascinating because it's a snapshot of someone's life, that I'm into. Okay, the last question I'm going to ask you, I'm just sort of curious. Have you ever wanted to score films?
I've tried a bunch of times. What I love doing is licensing music to movies. It's so fun and easy. Some music supervisor, some director, some producer calls you up and says, hey, we want to use your song in this movie.
Yeah.
And all you do is just say yes. And then you get to go to the movies and sort of bask in the reflected glory of their use of your song. And it's happened because I've licensed music to tons and tons and tons of movies. I mean, a bunch of Michael Mann movies, Oliver Stone, Danny Boyle, et cetera, et cetera. And it's great because then you show up and your song is in the movie and you didn't have to do anything. And it's really great. But I've tried to score. Technically, I did sort of score. The only movie I really did score was Richard Kelly, who made Donnie Darko. His second movie, Southland Tales, which is great, was panned when it came out. I think people walked out of it at Cannes when it first came out. It's really special. It's of all the movies I've done, I'm actually quite proud of this Southland Tales. It's so surreal and strange. The Rock is in it, and Justin Timberlake and Amy Poehler. It's
well, it sounds interesting.
It's really special.
That's what I do at night. Search through.
So watch Southland Tales.
Southland
Tales. So
Southland Tales. I'm writing it down.
So technically, that might be the only. And also, my friend Lucy Walker made this wonderful documentary, Wasteland, where I think I'm listed as the composer. But in both those cases, I gave them music that I'd already written, so I'm not really a composer. I tried being a composer for a friend of mine's movie. I can't do it. I know how to write music for myself.
Right.
I don't know how to write music for films because it's such a specific skill, and the people who do it are so good at it that it's more like it's more the craft of it, and I don't know that craft, and I don't want to learn. Because there are also so many people who are really good at it. Like, why should I like intrude on their livelihood to do something I don't know how to do? I'm perfectly happy just like sit in my little studio and make music that most likely no one will ever listen to.
Right. Everyone in the world has listened to it. All right. Any other last thoughts before we go? It's been so much fun seeing you, hanging out.
Thank you for having. Yeah, I the only thing I feel bad that I like rambled on too much about random stuff like Nickelback when we could have been talking about other movies. Should we do like a quick top 5 movies?
Please, let's do it. Let me you said you like David Lynch. Yeah, you mentioned Southland Tales.
Southland Tales, I love it. Wouldn't be in my top 5. Number 1.
Yeah.
Well, it's an obvious one, but it's true. It's Godfather 2. I think it's just the greatest movie ever made.
Yes.
Number 2, Starship Troopers.
Oh, yes. I remember you like Starship Troopers. Yes.
I got to screen it at the ArcLight with Wim Wenders.
Yes. I remember that.
Casper is a big friend of this network, actually. So you're in good company.
Starship Troopers is so good.
Cult movie.
South Park, Bigger, Longer, Uncut. So good.
Great music.
You know what? And I'm going to say this, even though a lot of people might get mad at me for saying it. I think Annie Hall is one of the greatest movies ever made. I know that people aren't allowed to like Woody Allen anymore.
Right.
But I'm like, it's a great movie. Like, why? Because he might have, like, I'm not even going to weigh in on what he's done as a private person, but like, do people stop listening to Chopin because he was an anti-Semite? Or do you just say like, okay, I loathe maybe what he's done and what he stands for, but I really like the art.
I think that, Annie Hall was written with Marshall Brickman.
Yeah.
So you get I think that's maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. So, and then My Man Godfrey and Bringing Up Baby.
Right. The screwball comedies.
Let me think. What are some others? Like, I know we're probably past 5.
You've never seen The Heartbreak, and now you were recommending I'm telling you I'd love for you to see The Heartbreak Kid.
I will watch that.
Because I think you'll like it. It's really dark and deadpan.
Okay.
I tend to like dark comedy like that. A New Leaf, I love. I'm obsessed with A New Leaf. Elaine May. Walter Matthau loses his money and he needs to marry a rich woman and kill her. And of course he stupidly falls in love with her. He's like, damn it. So that's a kind of a movie that I like.
The movies that I've seen recently, and granted this is a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Lucky, Harry Dean Stanton's last movie.
I didn't see it.
It's a great film.
Okay.
So good you won't. It's
okay. Great.
So special. And the other was Jim Jarmusch's movie Patterson.
Patterson, loved Patterson.
I saw it twice in the theater. I loved it.
Beautiful
Adam Driver,
film.
right?
Adam Driver.
Wonderful film.
But he's so good in it.
Yeah, wonderful. Beautiful looking film, too.
And I didn't know who he was. And I ran into him. And I was like, oh, you were in Patterson. I love that movie. And then a friend of mine said, you do know he's in all the Star Wars movies. And I was like, really? Oh, okay. Forget about that. Patterson was great.
And he's an animal lover.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he and Mark Hamill, they're doing a movie, and I guess he was doing a movie, and someone's dog got lost, and they stopped everything, and he enlisted Mark Hamill to help, and they found this dog, which was miles away from where its owner was. So anyone who does something with animals, then I love them, forever. What about music? Did you see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Yeah.
Did you?
I really
I loved it.
I loved how slow it was.
Yeah.
Until the very end. Mm-hmm. And I really love one of his last lines when he's talking to Sharon. Oh, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
When he's talking to someone in the intercom.
Yes.
And that person says, "Are you okay?" And he says, "I'm fine. Not so sure about the hippies, though." Like, that made me laugh out loud.
I love that movie, and I saw it again. I've seen it 3 times, so I just saw it again at the Beverly, at the new Beverly, on film. So I love that. That should be a place that you should go, maybe, to see revival films. Mm-hmm. It's a very eclectic. Plus, I like the social.
Yeah, every time I drive by there's something interesting.
I know. Plus, it's like if I were going to be in an earthquake, those are the kind of people that I want to be. I want to be with.
Is that the right time?
It's a little fast. You got to get out of here.
It's a little fast.
Sort of.
It went by quicker than you thought.
It's all right.
Yeah.
Alrighty, Moby. I think that's it. I would love for you to come back anytime you want, or if you want to talk about other movies or movie themes or songs. Do you ever watch musicals at all? Are you ever
Yes. So last thing, because you were writing about the Camelot Dinner Theater.
Yes.
So I grew up in Darien, poor white trash Darien, Connecticut. When I was in 8th grade, Darien got a dinner theater, and I thought it was the coolest, most glamorous place.
Me too.
I was like, how did Darien have something so glamorous as a dinner theater? And then I dropped out of college. I went to UConn, and I dropped out because I was having debilitating panic attacks. And I had one of the most profound cultural experiences of my life at the Darien Dinner Theater. I was a college dropout. I was broke, battling panic attacks, sleeping on my mom's couch. And my grandmother took me to the Darien Dinner Theater to see Man of La Mancha, and it devastated me. Man of La Mancha at the Darien Dinner Theater still is one of the greatest cultural experiences I've ever had.
That is really strange. We have parallel lives, because that was the show, Man of La Mancha, in which a man died during the show.
I saw that. I saw you, and you're you're doing it, and like, my husband.
The woman's like screaming, and they're.
What year would this have been?
I want to say 1979.
Okay, because this was 80. This would have been spring of '84 when I saw Man of La Mancha at Darien Dinner Theater, and it moved me.
Well, Man of La Mancha, and a man died during the show, keeled over in his roast beef and his mashed potatoes. And I was like, oh, show business. Yeah. Literally killed by show business, by a man singing.
It's a good way to go.
Yeah, but that was my early dinner theater experiences. All right, we got to go. This has been awesome. Anything to add? I know we've got we're going to go from Moby to next week. Ruta Lee, she was a big film star of the 1960s and 70s.
Oh. Yes, it's book week, I guess, because we have Moby, of course, 2 memoirs, both beautifully written.
Yes.
Collections.
Then I Fell Apart.
Yes. And then Ruta will be promoting her book next week as well. And of course, I want to quickly plug, in a week from Sunday, we will be at the Alex Theater, and we will be interviewing Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff's grandchildren, which will be very, very cool. So looking forward to that.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Very spooky. All right, as we end the show, we always say everyone's life is like a movie with a beginning, a middle, and an end. This is the end of our movie for today. Thank you so much, sir. Have a good day, everyone. Thanks.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.